I know it was only one game against Eastern Michigan, but it's pretty clear. Cutter Boley is the best quarterback that Kentucky currently has on their roster.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we're going to talk about Cutter Boley's performance against Eastern Michigan on Saturday night. It's pretty clear he's the best quarterback on the roster for the Wildcats, and the fact that they had Zach Calzada starting in the first place is a little concerning. We'll break down the win as well as what Kentucky's got going on, over on the Evan Mia ratings. I think there's a lot of different things you can take away from this, especially whenever you look back to last season, but take it with a grain of salt. I'll explain why later on in the show. And then to wrap up the show, I had a thought earlier today after seeing all of this point guard discourse on Twitter, just how important Jalen Lowe could be, not just for this season, but for the future of Kentucky basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if their bet wins, they'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you're watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you're listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribe there as well. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Kentucky beats Eastern Michigan 48-23. Not the most impressive game defensively. Obviously, we'll get to that in a second, but I want to start here with Cutter Boley, who finished the day 12 of 21 passing for 240 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, an average of 11.4 yards per attempt. Guys, I think it's pretty obvious. Cutter, while he may not be the most elite quarterback in the world, I think he's the best quarterback Kentucky has on this roster. And the fact that they were not starting him over Calzada to begin the year is, I think, more so because of the fact that they paid so much for Calzada, I would assume, or I say so much. I don't know how much they paid him, but it had to have been enough to where it's like, oh, we got a redshirt freshman pushing him. We gotta kind of dig in here. Kind of got to double down on our purchase through the portal here. Calzada, I'm not saying that Cutter's going to be the guy that plays throughout the rest of the year, because who knows, he may have a bad game. His coaching staff may go back on it. They may rotate quarterbacks. I don't know what they're going to do, but I can tell you after one game against Eastern Michigan in which he only completed 12 passes, he still is very much so, I think, more confident, a little bit more polished, a little bit more aggressive maybe than Zach Calzada is. And I know that maybe there's a couple of different turnover-worthy things that happened in this contest, but Boley was putting the ball on the money in the first half. I was texting people going, are you seeing this right now? Are you watching just how accurate he is, even on some of the incompletions, which it does suck that some of them were incompletions and not big plays or touchdowns. Are you seeing where he's putting the ball right now? I mean, he just looked so comfortable out there. And again, he only completed 12 passes, explosive at various points in this game. Now, Kentucky as a whole offensively was not like the most explosive here, but they were efficient. They were humming along, and I think that the advanced analytics absolutely do agree with that. Kentucky was in the 80th percentile of EPA per play. They were in the 87th percentile of success rate, the 85th percentile, of yards per play. And then the big thing here, after the Ole Miss game, I was ranting about how pathetic it was that Kentucky could not even establish a semblance of a passing game. Not an explosive passing game, just put the ball in the air and just have some completions. They were terrible in yards per dropback. 11.62 yards per dropback here against the Eagles. That's the 96th percentile. Cutter Boley, way more efficient in this offense, and I understand that Eastern Michigan, terrible, and I mean terrible in the secondary, but still, this is promising moving forward. What I said in the preview of this game is, can you put the ball in the air? And I'm not asking you to go out there and throw for 400 yards, but can you put the ball in the air and at least show us that you can do some things in the passing game? Shout out to Josh Caddis. Shout out to Harley Gilmore. Willie Rodriguez had a couple of nice catches in this game. Actually, I think he had one really nice catch in this one. Kentucky's going to throw to their tight ends a ton. That's just what they're going to do. We just have to accept that now. But they've got guys, Gilmore, Macklin, Law. I think all three of those guys can be weapons in this passing game. They got to find ways to get them open. But man, against this really bad Eastern Michigan secondary, Kentucky went out there and they did kind of what we really needed them to do, which was show that they could throw the ball around the yard, while also, by the way, being able to just tear through this Eastern Michigan offense, or defense, I should say, on the ground. We said that coming in, that, look, Kentucky could probably run for 300 in this game and not put the ball in the air more than 12 times, I think is exactly what I said. It turns out they put the ball in the air 21 times. They could run the ball all they wanted to, and it wouldn't really matter because Eastern Michigan's defense is just absolutely terrible. 252 yards rushing on the day. Seth McGowan, despite being a little bit more of a receiving back, has really, and I mean really impressed here on the ground. Just a hard physical runner, 104 yards, 3 touchdowns. With a long of 17, Jason Patterson got involved here. Dante Dowdle had 30 yards of his own. This was a really impressive rushing attack here from the Wildcats, and I want to see them continue to try and establish the run. But again, to go back to what I'm saying, the fact that they were able to at least put some things on film and show some things off for the fans that, hey, we can try and attack downfield. They had completions of 34, 32, 36, 33, 25, 23 to these different receivers and tight ends here on Saturday. It's exciting. You have a bye week now to kind of prepare yourself for South Carolina. That game is looking more and more winnable by the day. They were only able to put up 7 points at home against Vanderbilt, which I know Lenora Sellers was knocked out of that game, but it's not like they were lighting the world on fire offensively with him in there. So this is a good spot for Kentucky to be in. 2-1 with the opportunity to go into Columbia and actually prove that you can make a bowl game. You can belong in this conference. To be honest with you, man, after seeing that Eastern Michigan game with Cutter Boley, with him at the helm, I'm pretty optimistic. Now, does that mean Kentucky is going to be a really good team? I doubt it. Does that mean they're going to do anything more than maybe a 7-5, 8-4 type season? I doubt it, but I think that's really solid work given what we were expecting the Wildcats to be heading into this year. You still got really tough games against Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, which, to be honest with you, with the way that Texas has been looking, with the way that Florida has been looking, I mean, all of a sudden you're looking up saying, hey, we can steal South Carolina, we can steal Texas, we can steal Florida, because both the Longhorns and the Gators come into Lexington. If you can find a way to patch together, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, there's your 7-5 right there. You get a win against Tennessee Tech and then maybe Louisville to round out the year, or Vanderbilt. Who knows? Things are looking pretty good for Kentucky right now after not having many positive thoughts or many positive comments from a lot of national media, and myself included, heading into this year. So we'll see what happens. Kentucky still showing life defensively. They've got to get some stuff cleaned up. That was really, really bad from the secondary, especially in the first half. But, man, I'm not mad at what I saw against Eastern Michigan. Kentucky being, I think, efficient on offense was really pleasant to see, that they did not stoop down to the level of a MAC school, at least on one side of the ball. All right, I've got a lot of thoughts about the Evan Mia ratings. We kind of teased it on the most recent episode of the show. One of you guys asked me on Twitter saying, hey, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. So I'm going to break it down, because there's a lot of things that you could kind of take away from this. And a lot of them I think you should be optimistic about. You should be excited about. We'll dive into that here in just a little bit. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at the Game Cap. Quick question for you guys. All of you college football and basketball fans out there, if you could go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yeah, that's right. I said hat, because for me, it would be the Game. And these aren't just hats that the Game has. They're the same vintage styles fans wore back in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. When you use code LOCKEDON, you'll get your vintage hat for just $16.99. Head to thegamecaps.com to grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use code LOCKEDON for an exclusive discount, because legends wear the Game. Today's episode is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade, because 5 Hour's energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with zero sugar and zero crashes. What I love is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. I have absolutely loved using 5-Hour Energy whenever I'm going on the golf course with some friends over the weekend. I've been playing golf more recently, and you need some 5-Hour Energy boost to get through that, and it absolutely does help. It's portable. It tastes incredible. I love the different options of flavors. It keeps me energized. Absolutely. Even with the boring, with the boring flavorless caffeine, it's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade. And you absolutely should with 5-Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. All right, continuing along here on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. We got a lot coming down the pipeline here as we get closer and closer to college basketball. Guys, we are just 50 days away. Less than 50, I should say now, from the start of the college basketball season. I cannot wait to start it with you guys. If you have not subscribed, again, I would love it if you did so. We're trying to get to 20,000 subs. Going to keep it a buck with you guys. It's probably not going to happen, but hey, we're probably going to hit 18. There's a chance we might hit 19 as well, and I would love for you to join up. 17,000 plus of you. It's just incredible to think about. I really appreciate all you guys tuning in, whether you're on podcast or on YouTube, wherever you're watching. We've got preseason ratings to look at from a big-time player in the college basketball analytics landscape, Evan Mia, who occasionally will share some of his numbers with me over on Twitter. I'm sure he does that with a lot of different media members, and I really do appreciate that. He has released his preseason team ratings and player ratings, actually, for the 2025-26 college basketball season. You've got Houston at number 1, Purdue at number 2, Duke at number 3, which is something that I agree with. I think that Duke is criminally underrated when it comes to some of these preseason top 25s that are out there. I think that they are one of the more talented teams in the nation. I think they are one of the better teams in the country, and I think they're going to steamroll through the ACC. I think more so than Louisville will be, but we'll get to that in a second. Florida at number 4, Michigan at number 5, UConn at number 6. I do disagree with that. Arizona at number 7, BYU at number 8, Illinois at number 9. Interesting spot there. And then Kentucky at number 10. Kentucky is number 10 in the preseason ratings, I should say. And the projection for offense, defense, roster talent, I think is really, really interesting because it may not actually be, I'll tell you guys something that might surprise you here in a second, but Kentucky, according to Mia, has the preseason 16th best offense in the nation. They're projected to have the 16th best offense and the 9th best defense in the country with the 8th best roster. It kind of goes against what we're seeing here as far as roster talent goes, having a top 10 roster in the country, because here's the kicker. You go and look at last season's preseason ratings. Kentucky was 22nd nationally, 30th projected offense, 19th projected defense. That's right. Kentucky last year, I think we forget about this, was projected to have a better defense than they were offense, and they were a top 25 team. And the quote that came out of Evan Mia breaking down his preseason top 25 ratings, was that Kentucky has no players ranked in the preseason top 100, but their rotation might be as deep as any in the country, as every player in their best 8 falls in the top 250 nationally. So they had all of their 8 best players condensed between 100 and 250. So 150 spots there for Kentucky's 8 best players and their rotation. This season, it's a little different. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's so much unknown about Kentucky. And yet the reason that they're ranked 10th and have the 8th best roster talent in the country is because there's so much known at the same time. It's really interesting. It's a weird dynamic here. So Otega Oweh is Kentucky's best player that they have on roster, at least according to Evan Mia. And he is number 47. That's right. He's only the 47th best player preseason, according to Evan Mia. I don't know if I agree with that. In fact, I would probably disagree with that as somebody that thinks that he's going to be the best player in the SEC this season or win SEC Player of the Year, I should say. And it gets more interesting as you go down the line. Mohamed Diabate is Kentucky's second best player, according to Evan Mia, at number 59 nationally. Brandon Garrison is Kentucky's third best player at 69th nationally. Nice. Jaden Quaintance is Kentucky's fourth best player at 85th. And then Jalen Lowe, the point guard, at 88th. More on Jalen Lowe later in the show. Then, after that, there is a huge drop-off from Jalen Lowe to Cam Williams, who is ranked 313th. You go from 88th to 313th. The best 8 stretches all the way down to number 394. Jasper Johnson is 359th, and Malachi Marino is the 394th best player in the country. Some notable absences there, and I think part of this might have to do with maybe some playing time qualifications. Like, you have to set parameters on this, right, in terms of playing time and usage. So Denzel Aberdeen is not here. Colin Chandler is not here. Andrea Yelovich, Trent Noah, Braden Hawthorne, Reese Potter. A large portion of this rotation that we expect to be pretty impactful is not here. What's kind of the takeaway from this, though? Coaching matters more than anything. Kentucky's got over half of their rotation ranked 300th or lower, or just not ranked inside the top 400 at all. Coaching matters more than anything. I think the reason that Kentucky is still projected to have the 16th best offense, and they're projected to have the 9th best defense, I think is a lot of faith in what Kentucky has produced already underneath Mark Pope. Yes, having 5 players inside the top 100 is awesome, but having that big of a dip there after you get past those 5 best guys, which, to be honest with you, I don't know if Brandon Garrison's the 69th best player in college basketball. I don't know if Mohamed Diabate is the 59th best player in college basketball, especially if his three-point efficiency takes a dip back to like 28% or something like that, after shooting 40-plus last year on low volume. I think Cam can be more impactful. I think Jasper can be more impactful. I think Marino can be more impactful. But all of this to say, I think Kentucky is getting the respect, the preseason respect as a team, because of what we know about the coaching and what they were frankly able to do against some other more talented squads, arguably a season ago, most notably Duke and Florida, both Final Four teams. Coaching matters more than anything. There is so much unknown here in terms of chemistry and in terms of rotation at your 3 and your 4. That's another takeaway I think that we can have here. Kentucky might have, I wouldn't necessarily say a problem. It might develop into an issue as the season goes on, at least in terms of my eyes, or somebody that really likes to look at advanced stats, or somebody that just has eyes to watch the games. Kentucky has a lot of unknown in terms of chemistry. How will the backcourt of Otega Oweh and Jalen Lowe gel? How impactful is Denzel Aberdeen? How much is he out there? We did a whole show breaking down advanced analytics and kind of critiquing what some people have said about Aberdeen, about what he should be and what he is and what he will be for Kentucky. I think he's going to be better than maybe some people are projecting. And even if he is just simply average in a lot of spots, do you really need that out of your third best option as a playmaker at point guard? I don't necessarily know, but there's a lot of unknown with how this is going to gel, but even more so at the 3 and the 4. Because if you're let's just talk starting lineups here for a second. Jalen Lowe is going to start at point guard, almost definitely. Otega Oweh is going to be your 2/3. You're already seeing an issue there because Otega, I think, is a true tweener. If I were going to put him somewhere, I'd probably put him at the 3, but he's not truly either a 2 or a 3. I think Brandon Garrison is going to be your starting center whenever the season comes around. And then you have some decisions to make, guys. Are you going to put Denzel Aberdeen at 6'5"? Are you going to put him at the 3? Are you going to put Colin Chandler at the 3 or the 2 and slide Otega down? Like, how are you going to work those 2 guards, or that 2-3 kind of there, with Oweh, Chandler, Aberdeen being, I think, your best options? You could also have some issues at your power forward spot. In fact, I think that there are more questions there as to what on earth Kentucky's not going to do just starting, but also rotationally. And that's probably the bigger issue here overall, is what does Kentucky do with their rotation, much less their starters, because we know they're going to play a really deep bench. which is interesting. It kind of harkens back to what we were hearing from Mia a year ago, which is saying, hey, Kentucky's rotation might be as deep as anybody in the country. That's what everybody's saying this year. I think it's why there's a lot of preseason pundits that are so high on them. Analytics are saying something different here about the back half of the depth, but anyway, I digress. Let's get back to what we're actually talking about here. Does Kentucky start Mo Diabate at the 4? The more and more and more I think about it, the less I think that Diabate is going to start and even play a huge minutes role for UK, because I am starting to put my chips more in the Andrea Jelovic camp because of what I think that he does for them at that power forward spot. Because compared to everybody on this roster, he is more comfortable, I think, as a 4 than anybody else in this rotation. So I think you're going to have Jelovic. I don't necessarily know if he starts, but he's, I think, the best option for you. You've got Diabate, who's not a great offensive weapon. You've got Trent Noah, who I think is a good offensive weapon, but lacks versatility. I think that Cam Williams is somebody that you could slide down there at 6'8", but I don't necessarily know if you want to. If you could have him at the 3, maybe that's more comfortable for you, but then it brings into some defensive questions about how agile Cam is at guarding somebody that's better at handling the ball at small forward, as opposed to just putting him at the 4 in a man-to-man situation and saying, okay, rock with your guy, but he may give up some muscle in that aspect. All of this to say, Kentucky doesn't really have a true option at power forward outside of Jelovic. Who do they start? Who plays the majority of the minutes there? Is it Jelovic? Is it your freshman from Croatia? I don't know. And if it is, like, how well is that going to go, right? There are a lot of questions that maybe you have about Kentucky in terms of chemistry and in terms of defense and just versatility at that power forward spot. I think a lot of us are going to be looking up. Despite what some of us said about the strength and about the defense of Andrew Carr, I think a lot of us are going to be looking up halfway through the season going, man, Andrew Carr was really good for this team a year ago, and we wish we still had him. Just hold that thought. Because to kind of wrap up takeaways here, and I know we've been going for a long time on this already, we talked about coaching matters more than anything. Kentucky's going to be better, I think, because of their coaching. There's so much unknown in terms of chemistry across the board, right? Final takeaway is more of a question. Will there be another rise in the rankings for UK? Because last season, in the preseason KenPom ratings, they were in the 40s. Last season, on Evan Mia, they were ranked 22nd nationally. A lot more high on what Kentucky was going to do offensively. I think it was way off on what Kentucky was going to do defensively. Will there be another rise because of what Kentucky's doing in the non-con slate? And then whenever they get into SEC play, how is that going to fare for them? Are they going to kind of fall and then have to rise again? Or are they going to stay the same? What's going to happen here for Kentucky with their chemistry and with their coaching and with the opportunities to win so many big-time games? Will there be another, okay, we're shooting Kentucky out of a cannon to begin the year. They get a big win on the road against Louisville. They beat North Carolina. They beat Michigan State. They beat Indiana. They beat Gonzaga and Nashville. What are we doing with this team here come January? I think it's going to be a really interesting question, because to be honest with you, with the way that these analytics are reading, it's kind of contradictory in a way with some of the things that are being said. And then also some of the numbers that you're looking at here. There's unknown, there is certainty. It's a weird kind of hodgepodge of, we know what these players look like, just not necessarily all together playing these opponents. It's the second year for Mark Pope. He's one of the best analytics guys in the country. Take all of this with a grain of salt. Take all of it with a grain of salt. And let me know what you think in the comments below. And I'll just wrap up with this. And pause for water. I'll let you think on this for a little bit. Florida was not ranked in Evan Mia's preseason top 25 a season ago. They weren't ranked. How much do analytics matter in the preseason? I think there's a lot of interesting things that you can take away from it, but how much do they actually matter? I don't know. A lot of speculation. A lot of it goes into what we feel. There's a really cool thing that Split Zone Duo does, fun thing that they do whenever they talk about coaches, whenever they talk about teams, individual players, stats, offense, defense. They do, I think, I feel, I know. I think this about a team. I feel strongly about this, and I definitively know. We are in the I think and I feel areas of the offseason where it's like I can start to feel a certain way about Kentucky now that I'm actually getting to see them in blue and white, these new players and some of the old ones gel with these guys. I can start to feel things about how Kentucky's going to do things rotationally, what they're going to look like defensively, all this stuff, but we can't actually know until we see them on the court. Let's talk about something that I feel strongly about, which is Jalen Lowe's impact on the future of Kentucky basketball. And I'm not necessarily going to tell you he's going to do one thing or another. I just want you to think about the realities of this program depending on how Jalen Lowe plays. Let's dive into that here in just a little bit. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks. This episode's brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, so does Kentucky, trying to figure out how they're going to work this rotation. But on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. I've been playing on Prize Picks lately, and it's such a fun way to stay locked in for the season. It's quick, easy, and honestly, my favorite way to follow along with football. I love checking projections. Like, I'm really in on Lamar Jackson because he is my lead fantasy quarterback in a lot of different leagues. I'm going more or less on his passing yards. I'm going more or less on his rushing touchdowns. It's super fun. And the best part, even if one of my picks misses, let's say I miss on rushing touchdowns, Prize Picks invented the flex play so I can still double my money. It's all really awesome. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. There's no gimmicks. There's no bull. It is just really straight up, straightforward. Love using Prize Picks. It's the best way to kind of get more involved with what's going on during football season. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. NFL season's here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff next week with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 buckaroos, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I also love using FanDuel because it kind of fits however I like to bet. Again, I want to stay engaged with my fantasy players. I'm absolutely doing that over on FanDuel. It makes every single game more exciting, whether I'm just watching my team, which right now I'm kind of moseying on into Packers territory. To be honest with you, I didn't really have a team, and so I'm keeping tabs on fantasy stuff. I'm keeping tabs on the Packers. I'm keeping tabs on the Falcons. Some of you guys are Bengals fans. I am so sorry for you. Really sorry for you. But hey, if you want to keep tabs on what your team is doing offensively, I would go to FanDuel. I'd kind of look at some stuff. It's really quick, easy. It's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays, which frankly might not be very good from here on out with Joe Burrow out. But hey, I think FanDuel could absolutely make them better. And if you're ready to play, which I think a lot of you are, download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, wrapping up today's episode of the show. Pause for more water here, because I've got just something to throw your guys' way. This came across my desk earlier. Just a thought, just a little snippet of hypothetical. There's all this conversation on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to call it X. I'll call it Twitter. There's a lot of conversation on Twitter about Louisville and their backcourt. About Pat Kelsey, I think, was the one that said, and apologies if it wasn't actually him, Louisville is PGU. They're point guard university. If it was somebody else, if it was some pundit, I apologize, to be honest with you. I'm trying to stay away from all of the how do I phrase this? The dumbed down arguing between fan bases in the offseason, because a lot of it's just not good for your mental health. If you're one of those people, first of all, do what you want to do. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life, but I want to encourage you to at least kind of take a step back and reflect on what you're actually accomplishing by arguing, frankly, to a wall sometimes online about what he said, she said, about whether this player is better than this player, all blah, 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 blah. But it did kind of get me thinking. First of all, Kentucky's had arguably the best run of point guards here over the last 15, 20 years, I would say. If anybody's going to make the claim that they're point guard university, I think Kentucky's actually got probably the best argument out there. Doesn't really matter, though, for what I'm about to ask. What held Kentucky together a season ago? By the way, my camera died. I apologize. What held Kentucky together a season ago defensively? A lot of people want to talk about Amari Williams, which I think he played better as the season went on. He was the best defensive center that Kentucky had, one of the better defenders in the nation, or the SEC, at least I should say. He was better. But what really held Kentucky together was Lamont Butler. It was embarrassing, and I mean embarrassing, what Kentucky was doing on the defensive end when he was not on the floor in their backcourt. Travis Perry could not guard a traffic cone at times. Colin Chandler, as good as he was as an off-ball player, struggled at various points. Kentucky had problems at guarding at point guard when he was not out there, and it completely ruined everything that they were trying to do defensively when he was not in the game. Jalen Lowe, whether he acknowledges it or not, and I hate to put the pressure on the kid, whether he likes it or not, acknowledges it or not, realizes it's even a thing, his defense and his overall play will greatly impact not just this season, but the future of Kentucky basketball, and frankly, the future of his career. What held Kentucky together a season ago was consistent guard play from Lamont. Really, really good stuff from Lamont. You saw this offseason, after a Caden Lewis decommitted, went to Villanova, you saw Kentucky kind of go quiet for a little bit as far as who they were looking to kind of get as their next guy at point guard. And it was a little bit of a panic for fans for a minute until it felt like out of nowhere, Jalen Lowe commits to Kentucky. I believe it was like a Friday or a Saturday that it happened. Oh, look, Lowe is Kentucky's next PG1. And there was a lot of question about it whenever it first happened because of the efficiency, because of maybe some of the turnover issues, because of where he was coming from. A lot of Louisville fans, frankly, laughed at it, mocked it, saying, oh, this guy couldn't hold us last year, despite Lowe himself having a pretty good game against one of them anyway. It was kind of like oh, okay. Well, I mean, he averaged 16 in a Power 4 conference. How bad can he actually be? And the more that we've talked about it this offseason, the more that we've all kind of talked ourselves into, okay, Lowe, I think, has an extremely high ceiling. Like an all-American type ceiling because of the exposure and because of the impact that he could possibly have on this program. At the same time, I think he's also got an extremely, and I mean extremely low floor because of three things technically. His defense, on-ball defense, first and foremost. His three-point shooting. Those are the two things that I think could completely derail the season for Kentucky, is if their point guard cannot stop a cone and if they cannot shoot the ball. You have to be able, if you can't play defense, you have to be able to at least run the offense competently. Three-point shooting and then turnovers, I think, is possibly the third issue here. And again, I'm not saying anything's going to happen. I'm just saying this is one of the more, I think, boom or bust players that I've seen walk into Lexington in quite some time. And to be honest with you, I am optimistic. And I think there's a lot of reasons to be, but I'm also worried because what if Jalen Lowe does struggle defensively? What if he does struggle on offense where he's not as good of a primary ball handler as he was at Pitt, and he kind of takes a step back and we're all sitting there worried about that? What exactly happens to UK? I think their offense is way less consistent in the half court. It's going to overly rely on hero ball and shooting from players that I don't think are capable of being heroes night in and night out. Take away and put them to the side. I think defensively, like I mentioned for Kentucky last year, it put them in a massive bind whenever they really didn't need it to. And so if Jalen's not good this year, Kentucky's got to do they've got to rotate. Denzel Aberdeen was not that great of a defender at Florida. He's a lot better than what Kentucky had last season outside of Butler, but he's still not that good. Can Chandler take that next step? I'm not sure. You have to slide guys up. and make them play more in positions that I don't know if they're necessarily natural at. Jalen has a huge impact on what Kentucky's doing on both sides of the ball. And I know a lot of people want to make comments, and I think rightfully so, about what this 5 position does for Mark Pope, both offensively and defensively. It's a huge part of what they like to do on offense. But man, the cog in the wheel that I'm looking at, that I'm most concerned about, as far as this could make this thing fall apart in a hurry, is Jalen Lowe at point guard, because I think he's going to get a lot of run there. Because as I mentioned, nobody else on this roster, I think, comfortably slides in at PG. I think that's fair to say. I've talked about how important Jaden Quaintance is going to be for Kentucky. He's going to be huge on the defensive end. Huge, can cover a lot of holes for them. But if they can't get an offensive set run in the half court consistently with their point guard setting the table, it's going to put a lot of pressure on some guys that I don't know if they can necessarily handle that. They're not built to. They're built to be offshoots, right? And let's say hypothetically, Jalen Lowe does figure it out. He's been shooting like 40+% from 3 in 5-on-5 practice. I don't know what he's shooting now, but he's shooting very well earlier in this offseason. Let's say Jalen goes from shooting like that sub 30% that he was this previous season at Pitt. Let's say he jumps up to 38+%, and he's averaging 15 a game. He's getting his 4 or 5 assists per contest. He's not turning the ball over as much because of what the offense is doing for him, the scheme is doing for him. What does he do at the end of the year? Even if Kentucky doesn't make a title run, even if they do, what is his decision as far as where he wants to go next with his career? Does he decide, you know what, I've got a good enough offer on the table from Kentucky, I could come back, I can make a lot of money here, and I can get one more run at it and then go to the NBA? Or does he say, hey man, I was playing pretty good in some of these combines last offseason, some of these combine games. I'm coming off of an all-SEC type year, and I want to go ahead and make that jump. Okay. Understandable as well. Can Kentucky get the guard that they need next season at point guard to run the show or to be a huge part of it? Because Darren Rippey Jr. is not going to come to Kentucky to play second fiddle. He's not. I don't know where he's going. I feel really good about where he is, where Kentucky is with him right now. But Jalen's ability to play this year, if he plays well, could greatly impact what Kentucky does in the future. Because I've told you guys, I'm pretty high on Rippey. I'm pretty dang high on Rippey as a prospect. So if Jalen plays well and leaves, awesome. You get what I think is the next Davion Mitchell. And Davion Mitchell was a title-winning guard that did huge things in that championship game against Gonzaga. I think Rippey has that ability. Counterpoint, let's say Jalen plays low and he comes back, Rippey goes elsewhere. That really sucks. But also at the same time, you're running it back with an All-American, All-SEC type guard who has really solid efficiency and is one of the better assist men in the nation. Depending on what camp you reside in, you may feel more confident in one of those situations versus another. It also depends on what Kentucky wants to do in the portal surrounding that, because Ortega is going to be gone. Maybe you really do like Colin Chandler stepping up in year 3, depending on what he does this year. I'm not sure. But how he plays, how Jalen Lowe plays, I think dramatically impacts the future of Kentucky because, by the way, Jaden Quaintance is not going to be here a year from now. Kentucky is going to have to do a lot of reloading in the front court, specifically at the 5. And you've got to be able to have something to rely on 1 through 3. And Jalen, I think, could be a huge part of that 2026-2027 season of looking up in the preseason going, okay, here's why Kentucky's a preseason top 5 team. It's because this guy's back. Or, okay, here's why Kentucky's a preseason top 5 team. I got a 5-star point guard running the show alongside a really hyper-efficient mid-major transfer. And also, we really think that Colin Chandler is going to take the next step as a borderline 5-star coming out of high school, had his 2-year mission, comes back, and now he's finally knocking the rust off. He's one of the more experienced, older players in the nation with the defense to boot. And by the way, Jasper Johnson's was one of the best scoring freshmen in the nation. He's going to be paired with him. There's a lot of ways that this could shake out. I think a lot of it's dependent on how Jalen plays. Just something to think about. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. Follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And of course, God bless.